Cobie maximalism.
What's up, guys? It is Cozy here with the Cobie Maximalist Show. Guys, it's a big day. We're here with episode 2. And guys, I've got a good friend here. Well, we're becoming good friends. This is the start of both our show and, Path and I getting to really kind of chat for the first time here. So I'm just really excited that Mr. Cryptopathic from Crypto Twitter was able to join us today. Path, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, definitely, man. Dude, I'm glad that you took the time to come out on a Saturday, man. Hey, we're talking from across the sea. That's kind of an awesome thing, man. So this is great. Guys, I think that, Cryptopathic for most crypto Twitter users doesn't really require much of an introduction, but still, Path has been, in the space since 2013 and a notable trader and NFT digital asset collector. And I think that Path, one of the things that I'm really excited to talk about with you today is some of the both general thoughts that you have on where the market is at today, especially with regard to NFTs, but also just how there is this new sort of thesis that you have. And so I think that one of the things that I've really enjoyed watching you over the years is how you've always had an eye towards not just whatever is in the present, but what could be on the horizon. And I think in a way that might even be more expansive than just kind of understanding what different metas are or what's coming next in sort of a fleeting or cyclical sense, but really will be mainstays to come. So, Pat, I want to just launch in here. I know we just referenced this, but dude, I went back and I just recommend for everyone that they go in and check out your Up Only podcast. I'll drop a link of that in the description because there's a really good background on how you got started in the space. But Pat, I also heard that you played a little bit of World of Warcraft back in the day.
Yes.
That you still play World of Warcraft, man. So maybe just take me through because I was a young guy. I was like 12 or 13 when I first started playing WoW. And so, yeah, what has that been like for you, kind of like getting onto the space and then getting online in that way?
So I started playing WoW when I was like 10 or so, I think, and it was my first introduction to online economies in gaming. I was fascinated that, like, obviously as a kid you don't have a job, you don't necessarily have any of your own money to play around with, but you essentially have that power in this video game, right? Because there's real world value to the items and the currencies you collect. So that was fascinating to me. And then one of the easiest ways to make money was by trading, like on the auction house. So you have all these different items, they have their own markets, and you have all the same concepts that you see in regular markets, right? You have arbitrage, you have maybe an item is going to be more useful, more powerful in the future, and you can speculate on it. There's scarcity, there's different supply fluctuations, and so on. So I was really interested in kind of like making money off of market inefficiencies. That was something I did quite a lot when I was an early teen, and I ran bots on the auction house in World of Warcraft. Certain markets, like sniping certain items or kind of playing certain items if they were in a certain range. I'd flip them, but that kind of introduced me to like trading online and automated trading and the idea of a digital economy, and then eventually that led me to discovering Bitcoin. Yeah.
Very cool, man. No, dude, I remember when I was probably, yeah, man, around the same age. I want to say 11 or 12. And I remember distinctly that I was playing WoW at a pretty like serious clip when I was 12 years old because I remember kind of the meme, right, was that people, especially in dungeons or whatever, would be like, dude, what is this guy, like 12 years old? And I would be behind the computer and I'd be like, oh shit, like how does he know that I'm like a 12-year-old kid? Like I'm like trying to like get my DPS numbers up. Like I didn't want to be like disrespectful to the 12-year-olds that were out there, but that was just the meme, man. And yeah, my cousin played WoW, and he was just the guy that got me into it. And I remember seeing him at Christmas, and he told me, yeah, that he had made like 50 or $100 off of like selling WoW gold, and I that just felt illegal to me. I can't imagine that guy paid taxes on it. But yeah, man, no, that's an awesome thing. So yeah. Well, Path, I want to jump in here, man. I mean, it's really been a whirlwind kind of cycle, coming out of the bear market. I think we're in a bull market. I think that's pretty safe to say at this point, but I do think it's a really interesting time to be looking at NFTs and kind of digital collectibles in the sense that, we are coming out of a season where obviously most of the liquidity in the NFT market dried up for the most part. There were clearly winners that we're seeing now, right? Like Pudgy Penguins
Yes.
have just shot up to just under 20 ETH, which has been a really interesting development. And there are a few different projects that it seemed like kind of won in the bear market, and it seems like we're just starting to see that kind of play out now. But I wonder just if you have any sense of how you anticipate this coming NFT cycle, how it'll kind of compare to or maybe be different from last cycle.
Um, so yeah, we've seen Pudgy Penguins do really well. There's definitely a more wholesome and grassroots kind of branding attached to them because they had a comeback story, right? They had a really difficult time and then they got taken over and they've been kind of put in the right direction and everyone loves them now. And they're very wholesome. They market to kids. They have all this success outside of crypto, which I think is very important for these brands. Um,
Hmm.
there's only so much money in the crypto system that goes around. The other ones, they kind of target rich crypto traders as like a way to flex, but um, yeah, that's a limited market, and people get bored eventually. So it can be difficult, especially if it's not. So like punks are very valuable because they're an early collection, and people value them for that. And they also became iconic because they're early and people use them early on. So a lot of the OGs use punks, but then when it comes to things like Bored Apes, they don't necessarily have any of that. It's kind of just a social hype thing.
That makes sense, man. No, right on. And I think that sense of just targeting money from outside the crypto ecosystem, there definitely is a lot of I don't know what the word for it is, maybe navel gazing or otherwise, with just kind of a crypto Twitter like sensibility, sort of like living in the bubble. And I think that it'll be really interesting to see how different projects try to reach outside of that, right? I've always thought for a long time that projects like, yeah, Pudgy Penguins or like even Tubby Cats have really had the potential to be. Did you, dude, this is so dumb, but did you do Neopets or have any engagement with that when you were growing up?
I had I never really got into it. No.
Yeah. But still, it was just this idea of like it was addictive. Like my mom bought Neopets and you would go to the store, you would get these little toys, you would bring them home and punch in a code on your laptop, and it just would unlock like a digital world that you could log into, do quests, play games. And it was all from this like very basic Web 2 kind of web layout. But there really is, I still think, this potential for that to be kind of monetized in a Web 3 sense.
Yeah,
We'll have
well,
to see
so
what.
Neopets have their own NFTs, don't
Oh man. Oh dude, they probably do. I
they?
haven't been up on the Neopets lore, but I bet that's the case.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's Neopets is one example of like these early Web two brands where you can kind of go in and you have your own character or collection or something, and people love those games. But there's no actual like guarantee that you own the thing. There's no scarcity. Sorry. Um, yeah, so they've kind of branched out into Web three, saying like, hey, we want to be taken more seriously as collectibles, so you can have this guaranteed like ownership of the asset. Obviously, that only extends so far. You can only put things so on chain. Right at the end of the day, the company owns the metadata for that. They update it, and they give you the platform it works on, and they give you the rights. So there's only so far you can go with putting those things on chain. Um, yeah, like it is. I'm invested in Habo NFTs, so that's another early Web two brand that have gone into Web three. They have a really most of their community comes from the Web two side, which is really interesting. Like most, I really like projects that are able to kind of go outside of the crypto ecosystem like that because it's a much bigger avenue for growth. The idea really is you want your users using Web three without necessarily realizing it, and you can by showing how they own things in a decentralized way. That's how you can convince them like, hey, actually, it's not so bad to use this stuff. Kind of like Reddit with the digital collectibles instead of calling them NFTs, right?
Yeah, so Path, I think that brings us to a great point. We're kind of at a different phase of the market, like I said. I mean, especially on the crypto side, right? We have, kind of what institutions coming in, buying our bags in a way, right? I think BlackRock owns something like over $3 billion worth of Bitcoin now. And obviously it's been sort of legitimized, at least in some sense, on, the stock market and made a lot more accessible on the currency side. I wonder how you anticipate potentially like institutions, or even you could just say the further legitimacy of NFTs coming this cycle, if you had to kind of forecast or think about how you might expect the next few years to go.
Um, See, we've had the ETF recently, so institutions are looking at Bitcoin, looking at ETH. The most famously, I think, recently BlackRock CEO, talked about tokenizing their assets, right? And so that's a huge thing we're looking at for traditional institutions. They want to tokenize assets, put them on the blockchain, because then they're interoperable with all these different DeFi protocols that can be built. Or potentially they're looking at creating their own app chains. So they'll have their own financial functions on their own chains. Maybe they offer loans through crypto, maybe like leverage trading and so on. So yeah, there's all these different things they could do on chain. But just like USDC and all these other assets that exist tokenized, like they can offer those in a trusted way, and then they can be used as collateral. They can be used to operate with all these different functions that could be built, and that's really exciting because that could bring a really huge amount of volume to Web3.
Hmm. No, right on. And I think that then yeah, I think that's a great point. And now, man, I'm just really wondering if it doesn't seem like this has happened yet. It seems like sentiment is about as low on ETH, at least again, just kind of in the echo chamber of crypto Twitter as it's been in some time. And so I guess kind of a two-part question here, although we can always come back to the second is I wonder how you anticipate ETH's adoption or like, I mean, I can't imagine that you think that Ethereum is dead, but I wonder your thoughts on kind of Ethereum and as like this is kind of ebbed in terms of ETH sentiment, how you see maybe nascent NFT kind of chains like Ordinals on Bitcoin and then Solana, which oh my gosh is just to me I just scrolled at Solana NFTs and it is a graveyard, man. It's so rough. But yeah, I wonder any of your thoughts on how those two might interplay or interact.
Yeah, so I definitely don't think ETH is dead. I think it makes sense that it's kind of taken a backseat at the moment. We're not seeing any like huge NFT launches anymore. They're not really viable. So things have kind of been split up into lots of smaller projects, and naturally those are better suited to be on layer twos or on Solana, for example, or even on Bitcoin. So I haven't played around that much with ordinals. No, I have done a lot of research into it. I'm actually a really big fan, especially of like what Udi's planning. So there's Bitcoin needs fee revenue desperately to survive.
Hmm.
They've been very, very slow. So I was actually more or less a Bitcoin maxi until like 2019. And then I posted that trading view chart and was saying like, hey, I'm building a big ETH position because Bitcoin, they've said like, oh, you won't need ETH, you won't need all these other coins because we'll just take the technology from them. But then they've never actually moved fast and done anything. They've never taken any risks. So yeah, my focus became ETH at that point because ETH was actually continuing to innovate. So yeah, going back to Bitcoin, the ordinals, having this stuff in the ecosystem is really important for the long term viability of the chain.
Hmm.
And miners need that fee revenue to keep it running in the long term. And having ordinals on there are great. I think yeah, a lot of the projects, your profile picture, I think is amazing. I love
Mm.
them. So yeah, I haven't used them that much myself, but um, I think they're great. I love them. And then Solana, yeah, it's a lot of. There's not so much dev work going on there compared to ETH. Like most of the interesting innovation we're seeing in art and smart contracts and like on chain stuff, it's still happening in the EVM ecosystem. Solana, you're kind of just seeing a lot of pump and dumps, right, with meme coins and different collections and so on. So yeah, I'm not as confident in the ecosystem generally as I am in ETH. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great read there. And yeah, I mean, I'm just this is just me personally. I'm really interested to see, I kind of got into I'm a new head in the space for sure. And I really came into NFTs in the height somewhat of NFT summer. And I just remember coming in and seeing a lazy lion and just being like, I don't know what this is. I have some gut sense that it's about to be worth more tomorrow than it is today. And that just feels wrong to me. But, hey, shout out to the Lazy Lions. I have no hate for you guys, but yeah, and I did make a quick flip, but it's really just one of those things where I'm so curious to see how kind of the adjective animal phenomenon from last cycle will both like kind of evolve and grow and change because I do think, right, it's not just that Pudgy's, well, I do think that sometimes it's underrated how key online identity is to all of these facets, but still without making kind of utility a meme as like what is the project's utility, right? Still, I think that we're going to see these projects have to create some sort of some sort of roadmap that's not just immediately bearish as soon as you see that the team is building. So I wonder how that will really play out. Um, yeah, so Path, I think that that really just kind of leads into obviously kind of the main topic that we that I wanted to ask you about because I saw you promoting it on the timeline. You know, it's your pinned tweet, but I know one of the things that you're kind of especially interested in this year. It seems like really goes, or this year and beyond, but really goes into this idea of really trying to, I think, target some sustainability, the potential for money outside the ecosystem, a lot of these facets. So I won't do the talking for you, but I do just want to lead you into your Provenance Coins thesis and just kind of get your take, maybe just to start off for people that aren't familiar with what even a Provenance coin is. Could you just kind of define it and give some of the mechanisms that are underlying it?
Yes, so this is a term I coined recently. It can be called many other things as well, but essentially, a provenance coin is something that has ties to its creator on chain, the creator of the underlying asset in this case. So, the same way that USDC, it's backed by real dollars. Um, so, I'll use NFT as an example. My own coin. It's a picture of a dog. The dog's name is Kaposi. Kaposi is a very famous dog. She's in the Doge meme, which is well famous. But that picture was minted as an NFT by her owner, Atsuko, who actually took the picture. Um, and so there is a link there between the real event happening, the authenticity, the origin of the story,
Hmm.
and the on chain example of it, right? So with all NFTs, any artist who makes a one of one, right? That one of one is worth something because it was created by the artist, right? It's not a fake. Um, Anyone can mint that same image on the blockchain, right? But it's only made by the artist, um, and that authenticity is what gives it value in the eye of the collector. And that it's a social phenomenon, right? So that there's lots of different ways of looking at it, and it's very malleable. And you can say lots of different people contribute to it in different ways, but generally, like if there's a piece of art, the artist uh, gets the money from that, right? And people see that as how it should be, right? Because you want to support the artist, you want to see more of the same art come out. You want to say thanks for making it. So provenance coins, they're an extension of that. They tokenize the underlying asset. So in this case, a picture of a dog, um, and they allow it to be owned by lots of different people, and it has direct ties to the authenticity of the story behind it.
Yes, that's a great example, and I think that it really ties into yeah this kind of underlying idea of yeah, like on-chain or digital ownership. And even as I think in a lot of ways we're moving into a, kind of copyleft or post-authorship sensibility in kind of online spaces, I still think that this is really important. We're finding ourselves kind of, I was telling Path as we first logged on, this is a funny time to be discussing, kind of provenance, right? Because just last night, we'll date ourselves on the timeline, there was this big, whiff controversy, right? So man, dude, what a day for Whiff yesterday. But they put the hat on the bull right in New York City, and
Amazing.
then not only that, but amazing timing, just capitalized this. I guess he was a Fortnite streamer, is a Fortnite streamer. Puts out his. He's the guy who I guess initially in 2019 tweeted "dog with hat" and put it out with the picture. Although he was not the person who owned the dog, I think he just tweeted this randomly and this gets picked up by Solana, a few months ago, runs to what, 4 or 500 million dollars, is at least making a case for listing on some central exchanges, which may still happen. But he says, hey, I'm the guy who started the real dog with hat, right? So I'm going to launch on Ethereum my own coin, right? Which I think kind of rocketed up for a few hours, maybe. I think it's hit like 30 million a market cap or something like that, and people were dude, the bull posting on my timeline, it was borderline like Ansem and Zion just like going hard in the paint against this guy, or people being like, this will run to 200 million swiftly. There was like no in between. You either like loved it or thought you could profit off of it, or you were just a total hater. But I think that this kind of gets at this idea of like who really owns these memes, right? And I think that provenance coins are at least a start towards answering that question, while also including the people who are interested in these memes as culture, as owning a part of online history, a part of online culture. So I wonder, Path, if maybe you could just expand a little bit more into really why you find this compelling as kind of a key thesis for you this year.
Yes. So it's not black and white. It's quite complicated when you kind of untangle it. Memes can't be owned by someone, right? Memes are inherently a social force, so they go viral. They're an idea that is shared by many different people. The idea of provenance coins is paying respect to the origin of that, right? So in the case of Doge, we have the original photo that was taken and is recognized by everyone, and we're helping out the creator. We're kind of paying respects to Kabosi as well. We've helped Atsuko out with all sorts of things. We've made her a statue. We're very much a fan club for the origins of that. But the people, the reason these things get big is because all sorts of people from around the world, they contribute to it, right? They put their own spin on it. They create their own art around it. For example, putting a hat on the Wall Street Ball, that's a community made thing, right? It has nothing to do with the person who created it. So yeah, it doesn't. The people who create this, they're not entitled to everything that comes out of it, because a lot of that is made independently by people online. But then on the flip side of that, a lot of these meme coins that pop up, especially, so we use the original Dogecoin as an example. Like they're made for fun. They're never actually intended to get as big as they are, but essentially they get co-opted by people looking to pump and dump. And the same thing can happen with any sort of asset, including provenance coins themselves. But it's kind of it's being manipulated by people trying to make a lot of money. And you can say the same again about provenance coins, but the idea is we want to respect the original artist, because if this keeps happening, if artists keep having their art stolen, like if artists they have their art kind of misappropriated through AI and so on, and through all these different tokens, it becomes very frustrating for the artists, right? Because they're not being kind of given what they're owed. And that's not to say they're necessarily owed anything, but it's a social contract, right? So there's an amount that they'd be happy with, and then people are okay with it. So we focus on not trying to punch down on the artist, right? So Dogecoin got to what, $80 billion market cap or something
Mm-hmm.
in whenever it was, and at that time Atsuko had made nothing off of it, um, which is like a very extreme amount. Like the picture of her dog is world famous and is being used to promote a cryptocurrency worth $80 billion, and she's never seen any of the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so she auctioned this coin off. She auctioned the NFTs off in 2021, and one of them sold for $4 million, and she gave the money to charity, which is wonderful. And then that was fractionalized into Dog, a token by Blizzardell. I'm currently working with them on the tokenomics. We're doing an airdrop next week on Base, which will be big. But the idea behind that really is we want to spread the idea of provenance, and we want to spread the idea that, like, hey, you can actually connect these coins to their origins and have them be like linked on the blockchain to this substance that's there forever. So you can spin up a provenance coin very easily. You can spin up meme coins very easily. Like anyone can do it. You can dilute the market very quickly, right? Because people can use these names over and over again. Whereas with provenance coins, you can't do that, because you need to have some link to the original thing. So it's more, if someone wants to invest in Doge, then it's kind of like a nonsense idea, right? Because it's not. It's just a meme can't be owned. A meme can be spread around as much as possible. However, you're creating scarcity if you link it to its origins through provenance. So then someone they can own it, and they can say, hey, I own part of this picture. And people like that. People like collecting things, and they don't necessarily expect any return in value for it. Like I buy lots of NFTs where I don't expect to make any money back. And yeah, as an example, you can buy part of the image of the Doge. Yeah, people like it when there's a link between the thing they own and the actual story of it. And it's solidifying that when you have a provenance coin, it's linked through power of smart contracts to the origin, to the person who minted that token.
No, I think that that makes a lot of sense. And I think just an example that came to my mind as I was thinking about this conversation and the concept was, so last summer, right, we had shitcoin summer, which was just I'll say I'll say looking back on it, I made a little money on shitcoin summer, but pretty demoralizing. Just a lot of spin ups every day, and even to some of your friends, you're like, I saw my friends all in the shitcoin summer wars. It was brutal, man. They just and just the same players launching these just yeah, my redacted tokens kind of over and over again. That's kind of tough to swallow, but it was this interesting opportunity. And so all of that to say, on ETH last summer, we saw Harambe coin, right? Just a random, exactly what you're talking about, right? Just some people that say, hey, Harambe is funny, right? That's a great meme, which it is. And so Harambe, I couldn't tell you what it ran to on ETH, but I can tell you that Art School Reject is still holding a whole lot of it. And then it just died, right? It just kind of the hype cycle passed. And now recently on Solana, right, there's been some similar players that are just really getting after it, right? That launched Harambe coin, but again, no connection to any of the any no connection to Harambe really at all, right? And but at the same time, then I think there were actually these NFTs, right, that are I think legitimate and that actually were pictures taken by a photographer who was friends with Harambe, but yeah, friends insofar as you can be, right? And that these were pumping like just a few weeks ago, and so that at least is some value that's accruing back to the original kind of like taker of all of these photos. Is that right? I think that you had commented maybe on those photos. I don't know a whole lot about the
Yeah, so
collection.
I actually helped launch that collection. So the photographer's name is Jeff McCurry. He had about 5,000 photos of Harambe, and we narrowed them down to a smaller amount to make an NFT collection. Yeah, this is a very interesting thing to talk about as well because um, yeah, Jeff took the photos, but again, like the idea of the meme behind Harambe and like it's not Harambe himself who has minted this token, right? It's not the zoo. It's a guy who kind of met Harambe, took photos of him, right? So it's like how linked is that person to the idea of the meme behind Harambe? Um, and it's like a social experiment in a way to measure like how much people care about this instead of these other things. And then mentioning like the other tokens of the same name that have been created. A lot of that price appreciation is actually because there are insiders who they get in these things, they buy up the supply immediately. They'll say they lock the LP, right? The developer, they make the coin and then they lock the LP, but then you have all these insiders buy it immediately. So it's essentially like they distribute the supplies themselves. And then they go around and promote it. And it's promoted as like, oh, it's this great meme. It's community led. It's like grassroots, but it's not really. It's a bunch of influencers who are like insiders in this thing. So with Provenance Coins, at least you can say like, hey, the creator created it. This is their split. This is how the coin was distributed, and so on. Whereas with a lot of these meme coins that are supposed to be community led, they're not actually community led. They're they're kind of they're using that as a mask to make insiders money. And people don't realize they're being screwed over by that, and those same people will then kind of like become defensive when other ones come along like the same name. But of course, there's no actual protection against that. Um, the idea behind provenance is that people will respect that without having to rely on like IP rights or any sort of like um, legal process. Instead, like the same way that people uh, appreciate original artworks, right? So we can prove through history, through all this evidence that hey, this artwork is the original one, and people appreciate it because then that links it to the whatever story and whatever significance that artwork has. You can make an exact copy of many physical objects, but that doesn't give them the same value as the original, even if they are literally identical, right? If you know that one is the original, then that one is worth more. So, yeah, it's about creating scarcity, creating a more reliable and kind of mainstream friendly object. Um, but yeah, like that doesn't mean that people like even people who pumping up these things they actually contribute to the culture by creating more memes. Um, it's not invalidated by the existence of having a provenance coin, right? It's kind of just a competing idea in the marketplace, and the provenance it's more durable over time. Um, it has more longevity because this substance, it will always be there on the chain, right? They will always have that link. Um, Whereas the other like community meme coins, they rely on the community being there forever. So one of them can kind of go on existing and having the same fundamental properties, and the other one it has constant upkeep. So you could look at it like that.
Yeah, no, I think just to return to what you said about maybe just the shady backroom deals. I mean, I'm not even dude, I'm a bad trader, man. I am not a sharp guy when it comes to finance, but I love to meme, man. And so I think that just by having fun, I've gotten into a few large group chats at times where like you just kind of see these mechanics at play where it's like just whether it's either a coin that's already existed that is just kind of co-opted and sniped in that way, or even that's just kind of totally progenited. It's like, hey, we're going to pump this. And that's kind of a crazy thing to see because when I was just a pleb man, I was like, I'm sure that probably happens. And dude, it totally is, which is just kind of wild to think about, man. And even last night, I know with the with the ISA guy, he there was dude just so much of the supply grabbed up at the beginning,
Yes.
and then they posted about donating to charity, and I think it was Lawliet who was like, dude, like I don't, you're not going to donate to charity, or like, but maybe you are. And the guy responds with like a wallet, and he's like, this is the money that's going to charity. But you can see on his MetaMask interface that it's account one of 183. So you're like, this guy, this guy has just like botted it so hard that he has like over 180 wallets. Maybe he just is a busy guy. Maybe he's just got a lot going on, but seems a little shady for sure. So,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
man.
checked the distribution of that when I saw it, and like all the top wallets, like top 20 wallets, they're all like exact round numbers, which is a huge red flag
Hmm.
immediately after launch. um, yeah, I don't. The story behind that again, bit murky. There's insider trading going on, so it immediately goes against like the wholesomeness of like, oh, the original artist deserves some of the money. Well, they're kind of not that great themselves. In this particular case, I don't think they actually have any. They didn't coin the phrase itself, and they also didn't take the picture. So they're actually more aligned with the existing with coin on Solana and those holders, right? They're kind of part of the community. Um, yeah, so it really doesn't. I wouldn't call that a provenance coin in this
Hmm.
case. Um,
No, that I agree. And I think that what you had said earlier makes a lot of sense, right? The case for provenance in all of these different situations is going to be kind of up to both the market and individual users, right? But at least there's going to be some value accruing to people that were in some ways involved, right? So I guess
yes.
it's really just for people to decide, right? Am I going to be more comfortable with investing in something where, say, like in the case of Kobosu, where it's like going to the actual owner of the dog itself, or maybe the photographer of Harambe, or whatever it is. There's these different levels of or degrees of separation, but that's actually a conversation that we can have rather than like what coin is. Oh man, I've got a lot of names coming under my head, but I won't say any of them, right? What coin is so and so promoting this week, right? Um, I do wonder, Path. I won't lie. I was trying to explain to my wife last night kind of some of the underlying tokenomics and just like how fractionalization works. I know it's kind of a basic concept, but could you maybe just go into a little bit of like how auctions and the tokenized kind of like photos or pictures, how does that all kind of interplay within the space of a provenance coin?
Okay, so you have an NFT, you have an object minted on the chain by someone, and it's attached to some metadata, which typically is like a picture. Um, so we'll use Caboso, we'll use the Doge NFT, the original one, as an example. So Atsuko, she takes this picture in 2010, um, uploads it to her blog, becomes world famous, and then in 2021 she turns it into an NFT. So her address has minted that. It has the authenticity. It has that link to her. We know it's. We can trace its provenance now. So then she sells an NFT to Pleasedale, and Pleasedale decides to fractionalize it. So they use a smart contract and they take the NFT and it locks the NFT in a vault and issues tokens that can be redeemed for that NFT. So if um, you can place a bid. Sorry, let me go back a bit. The holders of this token can set a reserve price for the NFT that is locked in the contract. Um, it's a weighted vote, so the more tokens you own, the more power your vote has on the price of the NFT. And if everyone votes on or if 50% of them vote on a price is set, and then if someone comes along and bids that price, it starts an auction, and then people can bid. And at the end of that bidding process, the highest bidder wins the NFT from the contract, and their money, their ETH, is transferred to the contract, and the tokens in the contract can be redeemed for that ETH. So
Hmm.
let's say PZL, they sell the token, 10,000 people buy the token. Those people vote on a price, the reserve is met. That token trades on the free market as this is happening as well, so it allows for speculation around that. Um, and let's say like as the bids come through in the auction, it could potentially drive the price of the token higher because the floor on that is the highest bid. And then at the end of the process, all of the holders get to redeem their tokens for whatever the winning bid is.
Cool, totally. No, that makes sense. And I know in your write up, which I recommend everybody goes and reads too, in addition to this conversation, which is just past pin tweet. There is this idea of right. Then you can really say, I mean, this is like this is how I was explaining it to my wife, right? I mean, you own a fraction of the Mona Lisa, but still
Yes.
that ownership. I mean, this is actually something where you can put that up on your wall. It's actual art, like actual, kind of recognizable mimetic culture from online. And so that I think that is a um, pretty cool pitch, especially to again like a broader audience than just people that are looking for like the next 10 or 100x, which is maybe most of the people listening to this show right now, which I don't blame you, right? But could create a more far-reaching narrative. And I think that sometimes this is just my perspective in CT. We really just kind of have this. Obviously it's the mid. You don't want to be a mid curve, right? You don't want to be a midwit and just kind of think about things. But sometimes I think we can sometimes galaxy brain ourselves a little bit too much. I mean, it's actually like the mid curve, the majority of people that if we want to ever reach some sort of, I don't know, exit velocity or really just mainstream adoption, those are the people that we're going to have to win over. And I
Yes.
sure don't think that dog with hat on Solana versus dog with hat on ETH is really going to do it for most people. That just as an example. So I think that there's a lot here. I wonder, Path, what are some of the ways that I mean, this is a pretty new space. Obviously, you just kind of coined the term, but it is still a burgeoning kind of market. What are some of the ways that you see this kind of being able to grow or have legs?
I do want it to open a discussion on like where the value should lie in a lot of these coins. It does require for people to think more, which is maybe not the easiest thing in this space with people who like trading momentum and so on. Really, it's not aimed at those people necessarily. If these tokens are successful, then they'll come along anyway, right? There's no worry about that. Again, these provenance coins have more longevity, so there's no worry about competing. Um, yeah, the sorry, what were you just asking again? The
No, just kind of so maybe like in this way, right? So okay, so there's like kind of the Doge or there's Kabosu, right? And there's a few of these different memes. I mean, I guess what is kind of like the long-term path to growth look like? Like I think there might already be one of these tokenized in some ways, but like the Giga Chad meme, right? Like the
yes,
the guy behind Giga Chad, right? He could issue a provenance coin to profit from his just like jacked body being just like plastered all over my timeline every day, right? That's kind of the idea.
yeah. So that one of those images is owned by Feisty DAO, which is one of the DAOs I lead. It's part of NFT. That isn't a real person, actually. If you didn't know, um,
Yeah.
he is an art project by a photographer. But yeah, it's really that's something that they could do. So they've already made NFTs, right? So ideally, they've kind of already created the first edition of that. If they wanted to come along and make a coin, then that's in there. Like they can do that. No one can really stop them. It kind of it opens up questions of like, so they've already minted NFTs. If they make a coin, like where does the value lie exactly? Should the value lie with the photographer? Should it lie with the person they've taken a picture of and then altered? People have to think about this stuff. And so it opens lots of really interesting conversations of like, should the value go to them? There's actually no obligation for any of the value to go to them, right? Because people can do whatever they want in this system, right? There's no. The whole point of crypto is it's free. But we like to do that because socially it's acceptable. It creates a nice social narrative that other people can come on board with, and it actually, as we talked about, like there's better scarcity, there's better reliability, and trust in this being a long term thing if you adhere to those standards. Yeah, and I think that clicks more with the mainstream than it does with people in crypto necessarily, because people like they care if art is real, right? They a lot of people, they care about history, they care about truth, they care about researching it to find what the truth is. So they the average person typically they'd prefer to buy an asset that's it has some legitimate link, and also with DeFi. I'll use dog as an example again. You can lock up some of the tokens to create a pixel of the original image, and you can own that pixel as an NFT. So you kind of get another NFT back that's like a smaller NFT, or you can get like a print of the image, and you can then use those as NFTs to display in whatever collections you have. People love doing that. So you can essentially attach utility in some way. You can show off that you own these things as well, and collectors love that. I think that's a very important thing you can do with it as well. That doesn't really make sense with the other coins.
Yeah, 100%. No, that makes sense. And that's one of the first it's one of the first few paragraphs that you hear in your explanation of your thesis is just talking about this idea of how as humans and even we could just say maybe as investors, right? What humans are drawn to are stories. And I think that you can look at sort of these last
Yes.
few years. I mean, what we have are stories that are hype cycle driven, fleeting stories, right? Like I could tell you, for the last few weeks, right? I was on Stanley Cup Coin, right? Shout out to Stanley Cup Coin on Solana, right? But that is both capturing. Now, I will say they were pretty good memers, but they were kind of capturing a New York Post cycle, right? Like there's lead in the Stanley Cups, there's blah blah blah. It's all over the news, and so of course there's the believers. There's probably a tweet of mine or two where I'm like, no, listen, like Stanley Cup Coin, this is an institution, like this is the new Doge. But that rarely happens, right? Most of the time, these things are gone within a week or two, and the price corresponds to that. I really think that the sell right on Provenance Coins is that this is an enduring story. This is actual ties to these concepts, these ideas that we love and that we're able to both enjoy and potentially profit off of in turn, which is a cool thing, or just um, have a piece of in the way of loving a thing for the sake of itself, right? Just being able to say, hey, you know what? I just actually want to support. I just want to support this dog and her owner, and I think
Yeah.
that's a great thing too. You don't always have to be out for making more money.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
I want
course. With the Stanley
no,
thing,
go ahead.
for example, right? Like that wouldn't work as a provenance coin because that's like a big company, right? They don't need the money. They're not exactly like hard done by this coin existing, or like people don't want to be like, oh, where's the real Stanley coin? Like no one cares about that. But it's different with smaller artists, right? So it's about like punching up and punching down as well, and having that as a social narrative that people can get on board with.
So true. No, no, that makes sense. Even though, oh man, there's the little pang for what the 4 or 5 sold that I kicked it a Stanley Cup coin. Man, just God bless you guys. But I think that you're right about that. I wonder, Path. I mean, we've been talking for some time, but I do just want to close here. One last thing is, really, I do feel like there is, well, I'll start with this. Maybe how would you kind of steel man the argument against provenance coins, or maybe what would you anticipate as typical objections, or how people might kind of tend to fade this?
So a lot of people just don't care, right? Um, Again, I think it's the idea is allowed to exist in the marketplace. So over time, it will win anyway, just because it has the substance, and other coins they don't necessarily. Um, I've been thinking about like how people talk about it socially and how it's like branded. We don't want to antagonize traders of these other coins. Like we're not trying to like say these coins aren't legitimate and so on, right? They're completely legitimate because they've socially been able to grow to whatever they've been able to grow to, whether or not that was done with insiders or manipulation. Like they've still achieved that. They've still grown the meme, right? And the meme is a social function. So they've been successful in doing that anyway. It's more just um, pay respects to the original creator, and to give that a home and protect the provenance. So like we have these blockchains, we have these things that are supposed to last forever, right? They're supposed to be immutable forever, right? And if they're going to be around forever, then history is very important to include on that, and record on that, right? So we're contributing to that. It contributes to an on-chain culture, um, and that's something that could last a very, very long time.
That totally tracks with me, man. No, I think that's right. What are some of the ways that maybe for like someone who's maybe hearing about this for the first time or otherwise, obviously there's some of these projects you did mention, the airdrop that's coming to base. What are maybe some of the ways that someone could really just kind of look into to getting involved or making a leap into the nascent Provenance Coin space?
Yes, follow Own the Doge on Twitter. We have a huge airdrop coming out next week. Some of it will be retroactive for users of Base. Some of it, quite a lot of it will be you can earn it by doing certain things. So just stay tuned. You'll hear about that soon. Follow me, read my pinned tweet. I think I'm probably better at writing than speaking generally, just in terms of structure. Just if you give me your Own the Doge or NFT token a follow. Or there's another one as well, Sminem, OGSM. So
Mm-hmm.
if you know Roman, he's the actual person behind that meme. And he has his own token. He does all sorts of community events himself. Um, people love that. So he's a great example of it as well. We want to focus on like being wholesome and driving value where it's deserved. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just take the time to shout out because I know I interacted with some of these guys early on, but right, Dank Bank, right? They kind of were
Yes.
building in the Bay Area and have done a lot in terms of I think it's sort of like a marketplace for some of these ideas. Is that right?
Yeah. So they have a lot of Provenance Coins trading on there. I was an investor in them. They've I think the site's been down for a little while because they're redoing some things. They bought some memes and then fractionalized them, and created their own marketplace of Provenance Coins. They did not do so well in the last couple of years. It didn't really take off. But I think the idea, like it still has the same merit it did back then. I think it just didn't really catch on. I think a lot of the memes they bought their like older, right? So people just naturally they don't care about them as much as like newer things, right? Like a lot of reasons why meme coins do so well is because they're like new ideas and they're funny and people love joking about them, and it's a fast like cycle. A lot of these people they don't necessarily care about the history of it that much in the long run, but some people do, and I think your average person is more likely to care about that in the long run. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great point, and yeah, if you dig into some of the details in Pat's tweet, he also talks about, Dog is currently valued, or at least was currently valued at the time of your posting, right around $40 million,
Yes.
and GigaChad sold for $50,000. So, I mean, all of that to say, hey, not financial advice. Do your own research, whatever else. But really, this is early. Like this is a new space. I think that's for sure. And so there's still a lot of maybe you could even just say time to get in early because I do think that this is something that really could have a potential for that retail interest or even long-term staying value. And it sounds like there's even more kind of memes and otherwise concepts or artists that could really come in to kind of claim
Yes.
what has been these even greater waves or momentums that, like you said, have been carried on by people online, but that can still accrue back to them in a way that feels, yeah, a little bit more just and kind of right to me, which is a great thing.
It's a huge opportunity for artists, and it's an interesting way just to see how people value things generally. So I created NFT because I won two of the original Doge images in the auction, and I had the idea like, hey, well, the image is sold for $40,000, but the coin is at like 40 billion. Like, why does that gap exist?
Hmm.
And hey, I can experiment by turning this token into a meme coin essentially. So that was the idea. Like, why is one valued so much more than the other um, when they're essentially the same thing? So yeah, it was kind of playing around with that and seeing like how these things, yeah, differ in value, but also not just meme coins, but also like this is one of the most famous digital images, the main dog coin, right? So the one that's being airdropped next week. It's one of the most famous images of this century. If you compare it to like the Mona Lisa could be valued at like tens of billions, whereas this is essentially still only valued at 14 million, right? Why is the difference so big, right? Like the images are almost like as famous as each other. Like everyone knows what the Doge is. And yeah, what you said, like Giga Chad, that sold for like $50,000, whereas that image is like absolutely everywhere. Why are there not higher valuations on these things? If they were traditional pieces of art, they would go for many, many millions, I'm sure. So I think it's taking a while for it's maybe a generational thing as well, and just people of younger generations not having as much wealth and not being able to value them as high. So I think it's something that will change over time.
Yeah, and I think that even if you just look at Path's post, there's a picture at the bottom. I think that is of Kabosu and the owner. Sorry, what was her name again?
Attica,
Okay, Attico. So they're together, and I've got to say, like, you look at that, and you think about all of the just like degenerate means that I'm throwing out there, or that everybody's thrown out there all the time to drive these hype cycles. There's something that's really enduring about this idea of being able to fuel a person's success, but being able to be along for the ride as a speculator and investor at the same time. I mean, that's a very cool thing, and I think that there's definitely a lot of staying power here with that. So yeah, guys, really recommend that you just take a look a little bit further into this and engage with it. I think that there is just a lot of this idea of being able to beyond go beyond kind of whatever the next meta is, being trapped inside the sort of cyclic kind of crypto world, which is a great thing, and I'm so happy to be a part of. But to have this greater perspective, which Path, I think that over the years you've really demonstrated as someone with an eye towards kind of in the long term what's coming next. I mean, dude, it's pretty funny. I
thank
was
you.
thinking about you yesterday as Facebook or what Meta as Facebook was pumping.
Yes,
I was like, dude, that that was I think something that you were in on right from the bottom, and I have to imagine are still maybe very happily holding.
yes, I am. A lot of
Well, I'm
people
in on
like
the.
they. Sorry, yeah, a lot of people ask for like new charts and stuff for me. Like I can't. I'm a very patient person. Like the reason a lot of my charts do so well is because I wait so long. So people are like, why are you doing all this provenance stuff? Why aren't you trading anymore? I'm still trading. It's just it's the idea is they come every now and again. I can't force them.
Mhm. No, that makes sense. I think there is this sense of like when you know, there is some of these like there's some of these gut things, and hey, that's what can bring about blessed chart and cursed chart, and maybe provenance coins. We'll look back in a year or maybe even in 10 years and think, wow, we were maybe even earlier than we thought. Path, I just want to thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this is just kind of a new series of conversations that I'm having. So, dude, I just really have enjoyed getting to talk with you, man, and really appreciate your time. Anything else that you'd like to plug or otherwise, man, you're welcome to.
Yeah, just go and follow me on Twitter. I'm on Farcaster as well. There's some cool stuff coming on there. My projects are NFT, Own the Doge, and Wallet Garden, which I haven't really talked about in this. But if you go to my bio, you can see the link there. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Definitely, Path. And hey, man, someday I'm gonna have to get at you. I haven't played WoW in a long time, man. I'm so busy, but man, if I ever need to catch up on like the new builds or otherwise, I'm gonna need to send you get
Yes.
all my key bindings back in and everything, man. So I'll know that you're around for that, man. But that's great. Guys, hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And yeah, be sure to follow me. I'm over at Cozy Maximalist on Twitter. I'm an OX, and it's going to be coming out on YouTube and hopefully even on some other streaming platforms too. Stay tuned. And I've got some great guests actually lined up for next week. Stay tuned on the Tubby Cats front. We've got some fun stuff coming there, and I'm excited to continue these. So hey, Path, thanks again, man. And guys, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.